2025 is shaping up to be the year for Bannerlord's modding community. Call me optimistic, but I have high hopes that this will be the year we finally get to see and play some of the most anticipated projects currently in development, even if they'll turn out to be very early on versions when released. Now, one of those mods many of you are eagerly waiting for is of course Kingdoms of Arda, the total conversion of Mount & Blade to Bannerlord that will bring the Lord of the Rings world of Tolkien into the game. So more often than not, I get the same skeptic comments that the developers get on their Discord server, namely that this mod is dead. There's been little to no news, no updates, and so on. Even though updates are given, sometimes small ones, previews, etc. People still like to share their complaints on how progress takes such a long time. So I'm here with another video to, firstly, stand up for the developers working on these projects, not just Kingdoms of Arda, mind you, which more often than not, they work on in their spare time, with their own funds, or they receive kind donations from backers. All this whilst still having their actual job on the side. We have to remember that these are passionate members of the community, pouring their creativity into these projects, and they, at least in my eyes, have no obligations to the community in the sense that, again, more often than not, these projects started because the people working on them share an interest for the topic at hand, and they do so for their own enjoyment, and because they invest their own funds and time into them. And now secondly, which is in fact the main reason, I wanted to update you all since it's been a while when I posted my last video on this upcoming Lord of the Rings mod, which by the way garnered so many views that it's my second most popular video on the channel to date. So I'm glad to see that you guys are as hopeful as I am and are eagerly anticipating any further updates on this project. And also that the video was worth shredding my vocal cords for trying to talk with a heavy, cool voice. This time we'll go with my regular voice, which I do hope you can stand, because we're about to dive into what's new since last we checked out Kingdoms of Arda. Now if you wish to stay updated on more mods for Mount & Blade to Bannerlord, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe. So, Kingdoms of Arda, for those who are not familiar with the project, is an upcoming total conversion mod for Mount & Blade to Bannerlord. Instead of the world of Calradia, which you'll roam around in the vanilla game, you will be able to explore the world of Tolkien, which includes characters and locations from the Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Silmarillion, and other works made by him and media for his universe. This mod will be heavily inspired by the main trilogy, with the books used as support in case the developers stumble upon some issues in terms of creative choices and so on. This mod is heavily inspired also by the last days of the Third Age of Middle-earth mod for Mount & Blade Warband, of course Bannerlord's predecessor. So for all you Warband veterans that played that mod, I think it's fair to say that you can consider Kingdoms of Arda as a likely successor when and if finished. So naturally, with the world building as insane and expansive as that of Tolkien, there are quite a few things to cover. Firstly, there are various races and creatures present in the world of Middle-earth. Think of men, elves, dwarves, hobbits, orcs, goblins and uruks. Next to that, there will also be non-playable creatures present in the world and armies roaming across the map like trolls, ents, half-trolls, oathbreakers and barrow-wights. There will also be mounts like wargs, mumakil, and great beasts like the one that we saw during the siege of Minas Tirith, pulling the huge battering ram that is Grond to the Great Gate. Sadly, some of the creatures like fell beasts, dragons, rams, goats, pigs, elk, deer, and similar types of mounts would be, according to the developers, impossible to add to the game, either because they cause balance issues, are visually not appealing, or they aren't lore accurate. We are told that they planned on adding Gollum as well, but this depends on the animations they will be able to make for that specific character. Perhaps they will have him roam across the lands. I'm thinking of the Battle for Middle-earth 2 game, where Gollum is sometimes invisible but just walking around the map, and you would sometimes stumble upon him carrying the ring. He won't be carrying the ring in this mod, I believe, but I'd like to think of him being his own army just alone on the map, and that you're actually able to find him. It would be a nice touch, though indeed not a priority, especially not considering the scale of this mod. With approximately 25 major factions and an additional number of smaller factions, adding up to over 35 factions overall. They will be divided into roughly 3 sides, with the Free Folk nations such as Gondor, Rohan, Lothlorien, etc. fighting against the followers of Sauron like Mordor, Isengard, Harad, Rhûn and so on. Whilst neutral factions such as Eregion, the Rivermen and so on, they are small and too weak to deploy their own military forces to change the fate of Middle-earth, and thus they will act as buffer zones. So I've shown quite a few previews in my first video on this mod, but now we've come to screenshots of the developers' their work that I haven't yet shown on the channel. By the way, I highly recommend joining their Discord server if you wish to see more of their work and progress. First on the list, the village of Karagost, made by Emil. As you can see, this is a village which we'll be able to visit when we're traveling in the Kingdom of Gondor. I must say, the stonework looks absolutely incredible with its very recognizable architecture. You have these huge, thick walls, the grand scale of it, and it makes you just wonder if this is just a Gondor village, what would Minas Tirith look like? How impressive must that be? Then we have these beautiful screenshots of the village of Astirion, made by Karantuki. This village is located in the north of Gondor, so north of the White Mountains in the Anorian region. And when I first saw these buildings, I thought of Holdfast nations at war, especially when you look at it from afar. I think I could be wrong, but I think these buildings may be inspired by buildings located in Spain, or at least from cities or villages located in a warm southern environment. For me, they stood out because I play so many games in the Napoleonic era that it looked like it could work as a battlefield map for one of those mods as well. Anyways, up next we have a preview of Minas Brethil, located in the Vale of Brethil in Rudar, which lies in the easternmost section of Arnor. And if my research proves me right, it is a castle that belongs to the Dunedain. I hope I am correct on this. Those among you with infinitely more knowledge in the lore of the Lord of the Rings, by all means correct me in the comment section down below. But again, absolutely stunning work on the walls and the buildings, the towers in particular, and just the sheer size of this settlement with its multiple layers, making it just ideal for defenders and a pain in the ass I can imagine for the attacking side to siege this castle. Pelargir, which will be more known to you guys as an iconic location serving as the great port of Gondor and one of the earliest settlements of the Númenóreans founded in Middle-earth during the Second Age. These lovely screenshots show how it is still a work in progress. The city is located south of the White Mountains and above the delta of the Anduin. It is a huge city divided into multiple sections, so we can only imagine how huge it's going to be in this mod, with its many market squares, busy roads and impressively looking houses and towers. We also got some screenshots from lesser known Gondor cities like Caerandros and Linhir. Though lesser known, they're just as impressive if not more so. Next on our list is a very iconic location. I'm sure you'll all recognize the capital of Rohan, Edoras, with the iconic hill on which it was built. Absolutely stunning and truly a place worthy of calling it the home of the Horse Lords. And I must emphasize not just the level of detail when it comes to the walls and the decoration on those walls, but also the environment. Looking around, you can see the White Mountains in the distance, upon which the beacons of Gondor were lit to ask Rohan for help, and thus making it even more believable that you are walking around in the world of Middle-earth. It's all these things that add up to the overall immersion. Absolutely incredible work on the part of the artists responsible for these maps. Speaking of iconic locations in Rohan, next up is of course Helms Deep, located in the valley in the northwestern part of the White Mountains, and which served as a refuge for Rohan during the War of the Ring and the location of the famous battle against the forces of Isengard. We're even shown some lovely clips showing us a glimpse of what the fortress looks like from the inside, ending with a shot of the Great Hall. I must say I love the way the torches light up the place and how the light bounces around. It just looks so good. So yeah, these are locations that I wasn't able to cover in my previous video because they released these previews in the last year or so. Another thing I want to highlight in this video is the music that this mod will be using. I highly recommend checking out Drema, I hope I pronounced their name correctly, responsible along with the Kingdoms of Arda team for making some beautiful compositions inspired by the music of the Lord of the Rings. These will serve as the soundtracks for the mod, further immersing you into the fantasy side of this world, sparking that sense of wonder, imagination, whilst also being able to provide you a respite from the worries of daily life. Now, some of you may be aware that there is another Lord of the Rings mod currently in development for Bannerlord, namely Tales from the Age of Men, which is currently in an early playtest, I believe. But I want to say I think both mods can perfectly coexist as separate projects, especially since they both have different goals and outcomes. I'm not sure if these projects are trying to compete with each other. I think it's good news for you fans of the Lord of the Rings world that either way you'll get to play a mod within that fantasy setting. And the developers of both teams could even help each other out with solving issues if they so wish, and thus improving the quality of each other's work and bonding that community. I've sadly seen in the past other Bannerlord modding communities rival each other to the point that they essentially lose a majority of their fan base simply because there's so much fighting amongst the developers that they lose focus on their own projects. Hopefully that won't be the case here. I wish both teams the very best. It looks amazing already what they've shared with us online, and if the quality of their work keeps up, then we're all in for a treat. If there are things that you haven't heard me discuss in this video, it's probably because there wasn't much news in regards to those items, or because I've already discussed them in my previous video, of which I'll leave a link to right here. Make sure you go check that out. Again, I'm sorry for the voice, I hope you'll look past that. That having said, I hope you enjoyed watching this video and found it informative enough to reward it with a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more awesome videos covering all sorts of games and mods, fantasy or historical, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care everyone.